Rob here from Live the Boat. Today I want to give you some tips on how to operate your boat in rough seas. I'm here in Alaska, and as you can imagine, Mother Nature can be quite cranky here at times. We've got just moderate sea conditions today, which is going to allow us hopefully to get the drone up. If it was really pumping here with a big swell, obviously we wouldn't be able to get the drone up. But we chose this day because we've got a little bit of swell and some wind chop out here, and I really think we could probably show you some tips on how to operate your boat in a head sea, a following sea, a quartering sea, and then also some tips on how to run your outboards too in these conditions. Let's start with a head sea. A head sea is when you're running directly into the chop, into the seas, into the waves. Today we've got a little bit of swell, call it 3-4 feet of swell with some wind chop on it. That's also something that you need to be aware of when you're planning your day on the water. When you get the swell report, you also need to be aware of the wind as well, because there's going to be some wind chop on top of that. So we've got that here today. Again, it's not really cranking out here, but it's just enough to where we can show you how to operate the boat in these conditions. And then of course, every boat is going to handle this water differently. This boat is 28 feet long. It's got a 55-degree entry with pretty good flare. Transitions back to 20 degrees of dead rise. Pretty much considered a deep V hull, but every boat is designed differently, so they're going to handle the seas differently. So in a head sea, this is where you want to keep the bow down. This is where you're going to use your trim tabs if you have them, or in this case, I've got a Seakeeper ride system on this boat. We're going to go ahead and bring up the RPMs a little bit. This is where you really want to use that and take advantage of that entry and that flare to pierce through these waves. As you can see, I'm slicing right through these waves here. We're going right into it. This would be considered a head sea. And we're using that bow to slice right through these waves. I'm 10 miles an hour. Let's go ahead and pick up some speed here. Seakeeper ride system is on. It's pushing the bow down. You're really going to want to play with the speed here. There's 13, 14, 15 miles an hour. And I can go ahead and bring the bow down right here and really take advantage of that flare to really pierce through these waves. And we've got a pretty smooth ride here, all things considered. Now as these seas get bigger, you're really going to have to play with your trim tabs, or in this case my Seakeeper ride system. So I like to feather the throttles in a situation like this. So you feel that big bang right there. If I see a big swell coming, I'll pull the throttles back a little bit. If it smooths out, I might push the throttles forward a little bit. So I like to have my arm have a nice base for my arm over here so I can play with these throttles. Like right here, I'm going to slow down a little bit going into that one right there. And there are times when it'll be a pretty consistent swell or chop, so you can just set it and forget it. You can just go ahead and run. But more often than not, when I'm in rough seas, just for my own comfort and the comfort of my customers on the boat, I feather the throttles. We're cruising at 22 miles an hour, got the bow down. Bow's doing a great job piercing those waves, spraying that water off to the side here, and we're really slicing through it because this Seakeeper ride's doing a great job of keeping us right where we need to be, and that hull underneath us as well. Slice right through this stuff. Okay, that's running in a head sea. Now let's go ahead and turn around. We'll talk about running in a following sea. In a head sea, we want to keep the bow all the way down. We want to use the design of the bow to help us pierce through those waves in a head sea. In a following sea, where we have the seas coming directly behind us and we're going with them, we're going to be just the opposite. We're going to pull the bow up. You want the bow up as high as you can get it. We're going to pull that up. You might even trim your outboard up just a little bit just to get that bow up as far as you can. And then what I like to do, if I can, I like to get on the back of a wave and ride it as long as I can. We don't have a huge swell out here today, but we can definitely see right there, I'm digging in right there. And that's a situation right there where if that was a big swell, I mean, that could have ended poorly, you know, and that's what you want to watch out for right there in a following sea. And the bigger they get, the more careful you have to be when you're running in a following sea like this. This isn't too bad here today. It gives you a good idea of how to run your boat in water like this, but boy, when it gets big, you really got to be careful. And that's why ships out at sea a lot of times when in hurricanes and monsoons, they'll actually turn around and they'll jog into the seas until the storm has passed. Because if they get in a following sea, they lose total control. So you want to keep that bow up, and if you can, you want to try to get on the back of that swell and ride it as long as you can. It's called pitch poling, or stuffing the bow. You come down the front of a swell, you actually pick up speed, you hammer into the next one, you stuff your bow, that swell comes in from behind you, rolls the boat right over. It's a very, very dangerous situation, and this is a time in your boating career when you need to pay close attention when you're running the boat. Okay, now let's talk about running in a quartering sea. That's when you're taking it on your port or your starboard quarter. In this case, we're taking them at an angle. There's times when it can be advantageous to actually run like this, especially when it gets big or the chop gets really nasty. You might make a tack this way for a little ways, then cut back that way, almost like a sailboat, crisscrossing and making tacks back and forth to get from point A to point B. It can definitely be more comfortable at times quartering the seas than running straight into them, especially when the swell or the chop gets really tight and really sharp. It can get uncomfortable. You're actually spreading out the distance between the chop or the swell by taking it at a quarter like this rather than head on, so it can be a lot more comfortable at times to do this and make tacks to get from point A to point B. Then lastly, there's a couple of different ways to run your throttles. The first way is easy, just set it and forget it. And a lot of big boats with an elongated, pointed bow can slice right through this stuff, so you can just set the throttles at 3,500, 4,000 RPMs and just go. My boat, however, and how I like to run the boat is I like to feather the throttles. So if I see a wave coming up, it's got a real sharp back to it or a sharp front to it, I may pull it back just a little bit, like this one right here. Here's one coming right there. That's a wave right there where I would pull it back a little bit. This is going to be a sharp one. We're going to just pull it back for a second here. We're going to get through this. The second we're through it, I'll bring the throttles back up again, just like that. And we'll bring the speed back up. So there's a couple different ways to manage your throttles here to make for a more comfortable ride for you and your passengers and your cameraman. There are some tips for running in rough seas. Again, every boat handles differently. That's why getting sea time on your boat is just an invaluable experience. You'll learn how the boat handles and you'll gain confidence along the way. This has been Live the Boat. Please drop your comments and questions down below. We'll do our best to get to them. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for stopping by.